Our sailing charter in Croatia began in Split from the Castella Marina. We met up with our sailing friends on the Split Boulevard. Once we completed all the paperwork for our yacht, Sweetie, Colin was eager to get going. We set sail at 5 in the afternoon and arrived in Chaiovo before dark. Early morning coffee while still at anchor. Colin couldn't resist an early morning swim, nearly missed breakfast. We left the fishing cove of Mavachica on Chaiovo and then headed up to Primošten. We were fortunate to have the winds blowing constantly the whole day, making sailing a real pleasure all the way up to Primošten. Primošten is famous for its beautiful vineyards and currently under consideration for a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Restaurateurs cause quite a stir as they prepare fish for their lunchtime guests, especially among the seagulls. We walked along the coastal path which encircles the island, revealing a spectacular coastline of breathtaking views. We bought a variety of fish and enjoyed lunch on the town square. Soon it was time to leave Primošten and sail back down the coast to swing free on anchor at the island of Dubrovnik. Once the winds dropped, we enjoyed one of the best sunsets. The next morning was just as good. After a morning swim and breakfast, we took a leisurely sail to Rogač on Salta Island. We moored at the Pasarela restaurant jetty without having to pay any mooring fees, so this spot gets our thumbs up. Rogač Bay was peaceful and the water was crystal clear. Sweetie enjoyed a position of privilege here all alone on Rogač. From Rogač we enjoyed a lazy sail to the port of Sutivan on Brač Island. Sutivan was an interesting port with ancient buildings to explore. The coffee wasn't bad either. This is a typical home with manicured gardens, and the stone buildings were really fascinating. We left Sutivan early the next morning, picked up Dean at the quay at Supetar, and then headed to Povija Bay for the night. The White House got its stone from this quarry in Pučišća. It began to rain soon after mooring at the Pipo restaurant. We'd heard that the food was excellent, but the rain dampened our experience somewhat. We motored across the bay to Povija town for ice cream, then on to Bol in strong winds. This is the famous Zlatni Rat Golden Cape beach near Bol. Off to fish in the early evening. Yes, he did. The people of Bol certainly enjoyed themselves that night. We went to a unique restaurant. Take a look at that solid olive wood furniture. A few groceries, then off to catch the wind again. Our next stop was Blacha Bay, to hike up the canyon to visit the monastery. It took us over an hour to get the stern rope tied to a rock. The 2-hour hike was steep and tiring on this hot day. The hermitage was certainly worth the effort. A little undecided, but we finally agreed to head for Stari Grad. It's one of the oldest towns in Europe, as prime agricultural land made it ideal for human settlement. I'm going to do this, and if you can take the laser lamp up in front of us.
How far before you top it? Yeah, that's gonna be good. Thank you.
I don't think we'll hit, no. Stari Grad was one of the quietest moorings we had. Our next destination was just around the point to Far. Far is a really busy harbour, drawing about 20,000 visitors a day in season. Nevertheless, we scrambled for an anchorage buoy. We're somewhere in the middle of that squeeze. Before the moneymen arrived, we moved to the Baklenis for breakfast on anchor. From Far, we sailed westwards in a strong breeze to the island of Vis. People have lived on Vis for 3,000 years, being fishermen and wine growers. But this jewel of an island has been closed to tourists until recently. Early the next morning, we set sail on the long 6-hour journey to Korčula, known as Little Dubrovnik. We anchored in Luka Bay, just south of Korčula town. We found a delightful fresh market just above the town square. Another long day of sailing the 28 nautical miles to the charming village of Prozura on Mijet Island. While we waited for our ordered lamb pika under the bell to be roasted at the only restaurant, we wandered around the peaceful village where no ferries call. We thoroughly enjoyed the tranquility of the island and our evening here in Prozura on anchor. We woke to a glorious morning where a gentle breeze began to disturb the colours of the yacht's sails gleaming in the water from the early morning sun. All too soon it was time to leave this delightful anchorage. Today we headed for the ancient town of Ston, stopping first for lunch in a secluded bay as we reached Peljasak. Ston was to be our last port of call on our 2-week charter. But as we had arrived early, Kim decided to do a bit of knitting. Early the next morning we negotiated the very shallow Stonski Canal, passing Broci and Kobus and on to Dubrovnik, known as the most beautiful city in the world. Here you see Kim and Dean walking down the main street of this ancient city. So, 2 weeks of great sailing with wonderful friends has finally come to an end. Although we've enjoyed the Croatian islands thoroughly, we'll look for another sailing adventure in the not too distant future.